Welcome back. This is Eric Miscoll, live at SMTAi 2019. Last filming of the day here, and appropriately, it's the Eric Miscoll Show. So, for those of you new to this show, we invite a few guests and we just kind of reflect on what our collective thoughts are about the show, what's happening, and what we're seeing in the industry. Let me introduce my guests and then we'll just kind of kick it off. Immediately to my left is Mr. Ford from Aegis. One more over is Chintan with CalcuQuote. And at the end, as always, is the lovely Vanessa. No, it is Phil Stoten of Scoop joining us and sharing his thoughts on this. So the show's over. Everybody's packing up. We're having a beer. Seems appropriate. Oh yeah, cheers, gentlemen. Very good. Good show. We'll do this again in Germany. There'll be big steins then. Yeah, and Prozac. You can sing for us then, Michael.
Well, after a couple, maybe, yeah.
That's how it goes. Now, you both work, in software companies, and here at the show, obviously we're all here because of the big hardware in review, but there's not much happening there, new really this year, and people are waiting Productronica or maybe Apex for some new releases. Everything seems to be about software, right? It's you guys are, for the last year, CFX, Industry 4.0, there's a lot happening, right? And from AI to, I heard in Germany, the big thing's going to be AR too, right? That's is coming very popular. So, what's your sense of kind of how this is all evolving, Michael?
It's finally happening. For a long time we've had compartmentalized data in machines, information that has been quite hard to share around and create value from, and kind of people have lost the will to live, if you like, to progress with systems or solutions. If it can be done by a person, just solve a problem, okay, just do it. Let's just continue what we've been doing, refine what we've been doing. But now something's changing. There's something in the air that's different. People are really starting to talk about data, like they understand what it is, about value that they can get from that data, about mechanisms to share the data around. And this is provoking a lot of thought. So people are now thinking, okay, so I have this information, and okay, I understand now how I can get that, but what am I going to do with it? How's that going to affect my business, my opportunity? I mean, we see the world changing with taxes and tariffs taking their toll, new opportunities being gained as a part of that, but how do I use that information now to differentiate myself? So it's becoming a business question, a business discussion, and we're kind of now taking the technology as being for granted. We know that the machine vendors are going to allow us to share the data. We know that the software systems can do a variety of different functions. Good. Now we understand that. Show me the value. Let's go. Let's go and do something with this.
Chintan, how do you see that?
Yeah, so I think from CalcuQuote's perspective, what we're seeing is people were very interested in solving a specific problem initially, but now they're starting to see it's not just in a bubble, right? Every process is connected to another process, and so what you were saying about seeing the value out of the data, what a lot of our customers are starting with is they're saying, well, I want my data to flow through the rest of my business, right? If I entered it once, show me how it's going to impact downstream processes, things like that. And so that's really what we're seeing a lot of as well, is the connected nature of data now that wasn't there before. Before it was, well, I have it in a spreadsheet, it's fine. Now it's, no, I need that data to show up at every data point across the, from the beginning of when I get a quote to when I ship the product, and see how it all relates to each other, so that I can improve my business process from there.
Yeah. Sorry, I think what you're talking about there is kind of that digital thread that runs through everything, and it connects everything. And it's kind of interesting because if I look at Aegis, it's really about resolving those big issues and bringing it all together, and that very broad MES package. And with you guys, it's about solving something very specific, which is in some cases, the only way people can get out of the paralysis they're in and get started. So if it gets them on the journey and it gets them to connect, and then they start to use that data elsewhere, to me that's hugely valuable.
You're going to answer.
I mean, look at us guys here. I mean, who would have thought our companies, the data flow would have any significance? But when you're getting a job to be quoted, you need to understand the condition of the factory. What is my capability? What are my materials? What do I need to buy? The delta. Where they're going to come from, what is the lead time, what is the cost. So there's a lot of information that is shared from MES that goes into making a quote. You know, how are my different configurations, which one shall I choose? And so before, these were thought about in separate compartments. And maybe somebody would email somebody or telephone somebody to say, is this okay, can you do that, what do you think? Now it's digital. Mm-hmm. Now we're sharing information. And so each of us has a benefit from each other.
To take that one step further, it's not just within the factory walls anymore either, right? It's I want to know real time what's the inventory position of my suppliers and their warehouses, so I can have more predictive analytics in the long term about, can I actually build this as my customers asked for it? I know I have the labor capacity, but will I have the materials available on time and things like that as well?
Yeah, I think, sorry to interrupt you, Eric, because I know it's the Eric Miscoll Show, not the Philip Stoten Show, but I think that's comes at a time where it's never been more critical for manufacturers to be agile. So there's a whole dynamic that's demanding agility in terms of moving manufacturing to different locations, trends in regionalization, the demands and challenges of tariffs, unpredictability of products, fast time to market, iterations. All of those are creating a demand in the market for data-driven processes, and at the same time we seem to finally be getting the building blocks at the base in place to be able to deliver those solutions.
Let me play a bit of a skeptic here, if you allow me. 20-some years ago, I remember when I worked in market research, did a quarterly forum, and I remember back then people saying what they wanted was their supply chain should be a glass pipeline where they could see everything and know everything and all that. 20 years on, it's not there. Right, and it's not because we lack the ability, the technology. I think it comes down to business, and it comes down to, so I hear this, let's all share and do all this, but at the end of the day, we're competitive companies in there, and I've talked to a few people out on the floor the last few days about that too, and they say, well, yeah, you're right. At the end of the day, we could do it. Why should we? Where's the money in it?
Well, my guess is that was probably at a Tech Forecasters event, and it was probably an EMS that was saying that.
No, actually.
Or an OEM.
It was actually a big software. Oh, it was the OEM who was requested.
Yeah, so it's kind of this curious dynamic of EMS in that the requirement for manufacturing excellence and the development of manufacturing excellence got kind of somehow lost when OEMs outsourced their manufacturing, and the EMS guys didn't have the margin to pick that up. So it kind of got left to pressure, or development got left to their suppliers, and that creates opportunities for companies like CalcuQuote and companies like Aegis and others. And the pressure started to come from the OEM. So it kind of comes in two directions, and it needs pressure from the customer to make the change. The industry, the EMS industry, is like this huge super tanker that just won't turn on a sixpence. It takes a long time to get it going. It takes a long time to get it to change direction.
And I think the conditions are also ripe right now compared to even 5 years ago when we started. The idea of open sharing of information between suppliers and their customers was, what's the business case behind that? And now it's not just that the industry is asking for it, it's that there is a mutually beneficial environment where the suppliers can benefit from it, and the OEMs can benefit from it, and the CMs are benefiting from it, and the engineers are benefiting from it. So everybody's found a use case now that, okay, this is really going to be something that works under these conditions. Now, if you break that equilibrium and one person starts to take advantage of it, then that doesn't work. But they've figured out what that equilibrium is. It just took them a while.
Yeah, I think one of the big things that's changed in the supply chain is the time. Because 20 years ago we were using ERP systems to predict 6 months, 9 months into the future. MRP would order stuff from overseas with a long lead time, and that was the state of things. So you just had a bit of paper that told you when things were going to arrive, and that was it. Nowadays we have to have manufacturing, turn on a dime, where a customer will come along and say, look, I've got a variable rate, I don't know what customers are going to need, I expect they're going to need this, but I want you to have things in place to make it happen should it be needed. And so your job is, as a manufacturer, is to be flexible, to respond to that demand to the customer. Then you take that a step back and you think, well, if I'm going to be that flexible in manufacturing, I need to be that flexible for my supply chain, and then for that supply chain, for the further supply chain. So you're continuously chasing the ability to mix things together and create what you need at the time you need them. Being visible in the exchange of data is essential to make that happen, because you don't have time to do it manually. Data has to be exchanged. But that doesn't mean you have to exchange every data. There are certain data that you wouldn't want to expose. I mean, anything related to the design or stuff like that. I mean, you have to be practical about what do I need to share in order to get the job done. And that may be different whether I'm considering supply chain, quality, product reliability, or feedback to design to make design better next time. You identify the partners with whom you would like to share the data. At least the data is now there at your fingertips, so you have the choice. And you can change your mind day by day as to how you use the data, but at least you've got it now.
Yeah, it's that idea of lakes and lakes of data that can be properly interrogated. So you can pull out the piece you need for a dashboard on a certain occasion, but then you can drill down and get more and more. If you have an issue, you have a recall, you have a traceability requirement, and that's where the value comes. And now we seem to be getting to the point where we have the ability to harvest that data, and hopefully AI will give us the ability to manipulate it in more intelligent ways.
Let's talk about AI. I mean, that's been all the talk here. Well, not all, but a very big issue for the last many years.
Yep.
And becoming increasing. There's a lot of hope placed on it, right? And people think there may be some of that, may be some false expectations related to it as well, right? It's not going to solve all problems, but it's certainly advancing us and doing a lot of good things, right? So, so how do you see this?
I think, first of all, we need to get to understand what AI actually is. A lot of companies are using AI in place of an algorithm. Whether it's a machine learning algorithm, there are some really clever software out there from the machine vendors as well as software providers. And they are tuned to calculate from a data lake, for example, or transactions that happen, events. They are programmed. They have a set of rules, and they react in a certain way to those rules. So they call that AI. And it's very sophisticated rules, but it's not actually AI. AI is true AI is where the software itself is capable of measuring the outcome in a way that's not pre-programmed and can adjust the parameters so that it notices if it made a decision, or let's say a whole series of decisions, and some were better than others and it couldn't figure out why, it would go back, analyze the parameters and adjust them to improve the outcome. Now that is true intelligence. Okay, it's not something that's like a human intelligence, but it's on the way toward that. It's a changing and evolving entity within software. The ability of that to start to look at not just the level 1 machine data or the level 2 MES data, but to look above the whole business chain itself and identify what works and what doesn't work. And should a problem happen, what were the unique set of circumstances that contributed to make that problem happen, and how can I change my rules to avoid it? It will then suggest changes back to be executed through MES at a line level to make sure that problem never happens again. So we are seeing that true AI being that far away now. The rest of it is machine learning and all of the good stuff that the machine vendors do. That's all relevant and that's all great. But we are still to make that top bit.
Yeah, it's that leap from narrow to a broader version of AI, because that narrow AI is being used in the industry, and there are people using it for counterfeit detection and a whole bunch of other things, and it's kind of available as modular software to use. So I wonder if it will find its way into kind of quoting software, bill of materials management, that kind of thing?
So we've actually already started. That was one of our strategic objectives for the year, is how do we incorporate AI and machine learning, and we use them interchangeably internally just because we're dealing with a very narrow band to begin with, right? But from our perspective, the problems that AI can help solve for us is, for example, one of the biggest struggles that people have when they're doing quoting is incorrect, invalid, incomplete part numbers, and being able to recognize that and turn that into something that actually interprets the description and matches it with the manufacturer and the manufacturer part number and says, this is what you must have actually meant. That's the kind of thing that we're seeing even on the quoting side, just cleaning up the messy data. And then the other part of it is that, at least the biggest challenge we've seen is, from an algorithm perspective, we can create a model where it can learn based on user actions and things like that, but we have to make it such that the industry can adopt it, right? That's the big part of this, is people don't want a black box that automatically spits out an answer. They want to know how you arrived at their answer, show me your work, so that I can become comfortable with you and start to trust you and then get there. And that's one of the big things that we've been focusing on, is what's the user experience going to be like so that they feel comfortable training this algorithm or this AI or whatever it is, so that it learns over time, and then they just little by little let go of that wheel and say, yeah, I'm going to let it drive now.
I'm glad you said that, because I heard a very, very funny story recently where in a similar area, a so-called AI had been set up to order materials in case there were material shortages. So it would go out and it would even look at news feeds, it would look at Google, it would look at all kinds of market and planetary changes, weather, all kinds of stuff, to go into its calculation for how much stock should it advance purchase and bring into the factory so as to never threaten production. Now, it sounded like a good idea at the time.
Never threaten production. We already have it.
So its focus was really binary, never disturb production. So anything could happen. There could be a storm, there could be, and so it calculated for one particular part that it was a high risk. There was a high risk that this was going to become short. So this AI ordered all of them. It just bought
forever.
Pretty much
Everything in the market.
It just bought a huge amount of this component, and guess what? There was a shortage. It created its own shortage. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So, these AIs, these machine learning programs, you've got to be able to focus on what the customer actually needs practically. And, we see some science fiction stories of how things go wrong with AIs. Well, it's starting now, and that's just a funny example. So I'm glad that you said what you said about really taking that customer side to really understand, because we don't lose sight of that.
It's the user interface, but then essentially it's the relationship between the expert and the AI. And, one of the facts of this industry is there's a lot of tribal knowledge, a lot of experience around that just kind of knows the way things work, and being able to combine that with good AI that's going to manipulate huge amounts of data is valuable. But if you just hand the reins over to the robots, we're going to be in big trouble. We all saw Terminator.
I heard recently the comment that, the problem with Industry 4.0, to jump to it, is that we're still running Management 1.0, right? So it's so technology's advancing, but the rest of us, right, and those of us making decisions, and maybe programming, like AI reflects the programming effectively. Then not the true AI right now, but what we're calling AI reflects the individual who was a human who programmed it. And so it gives almost a false hope that there's this objectivity involved in it, when really there's still some subjectivity in that. Right?
Yeah, there really is. I think we really need for people to understand what the goal is going to be. They have to have that compelling reason to adopt Industry 4.0. It's been out there for 5 years now. People have become complacent about it. They hear all about these connectivity standards as well. It's just a lot of information, and they don't really see that it's relevant in many cases. But when they see a real business opportunity where Industry 4.0 style AIs and data manipulation can work, that's what they need to go forward. So I think we need to now start searching for people who are willing to share those examples of how they've really made a difference to their business through the use of software based on the data.
Yeah, I think with Industry 4.0, we get asked the question about that kind of stuff, right? The IPC standard for 2610. I don't remember the number.
2591 CFX?
Yes.
2581 designed through manufacturing? I mean,
I think
there's so many.
Yeah.
Maybe we could design an AI to remember all these numbers for us.
I don't remember all the numbers. But we get asked the question in different ways, but what they're looking for is a standard, because people will say, well, how do I reformat a bill of material to make sure it works with this system and that system? And the industry's begging for a solution on that. It's just a matter of everybody just needs to start subscribing to that standard, right? And that's a really hard thing to get everybody to do at once. But as the pain point becomes greater, because they see the value down the line, right? They're seeing that I wish I could do this. Well, eventually they'll say, well, for me to get there, here's the steps I need to take, and part of it needs to be adopting some standards so that the data goes in a good way.
Yeah, really, for me, it's been really satisfying to be working with standards body like IPC, because no matter what your tools of choice may be, the fact that you have machines and tools that are interoperable, that you can choose the best tool for the job without having to worry about incompatibility and waste of investment. That's a big burden that's removed from companies who are seeing the way forward as a risk. So it's great to be a part of that.
Yeah, and somehow, Michael, you've made standards very rock and roll. You're now the cover girl for CFX, and every month I look forward to the magazines arriving to see which one your beaming smile is on the front of. So
Bring that out, but you are on the one. Your face is everywhere here.
Tree 4.0 today this month, but there'll be more.
Yeah, that's good.
Gentlemen, thank you. They're starting to tear everything down around us. Hopefully you all can't hear
pull
that.
the carpet up
Listen,
underneath
they're
us
going to be
soon,
doing
so.
this next, but great conversation. Thank you for sharing, and we will see you all in Germany, I trust.
Indeed.
Cheers. Closed.